All right, so, I thought we had two great presentations this morning, and particularly a lot of the stuff that Don shared with us is kind of where we're going to go this morning in my session. Just to tell you a little bit of myself, most of you know who I am, John Oliver. I've been with Transamerica 24 years now. I started out in the advanced marketing group, and right now I work with the sales group and the marketing group. And so really what I do is work with our general agencies, your general agencies, and our producers in this environment to help you grow your sales. So our presentation today is really going to be around that line of what Don was talking about, customer-centric. I think a lot of times it's very easy as a carrier to fall in line and start talking about product. Well, we have a lot of great competitors. There's a lot of great carriers, a lot of great ratings, a lot of great product out there. What I really need to do is grow your piece of the business. When I talk to the GAs, I always talk about how we can grow their business. Talking to you, what we hope you saw so far today is our commitment to grow your business. In this session, what I want to do is grow your business. And we know that the consumer's been changing. We hear this constantly. And both of our speakers addressed a lot of that. And how can we become more customer-centric? How can we be more focused on the right customer that we can offer solutions to? How do we engage with that customer to have a meaningful conversation that will ultimately lead to us providing a solution out of the products that we offer to whatever their issues are? So that's really what we're going to tackle today. And what I put up for you is the title of my presentation is, how do we succeed in the affluent market today? Well, my hint was that I came from advanced marketing. And I also told you I've been in Transamerica 24 years. So I started in advanced marketing in the early 90s. Anybody remember what was the exemption equivalent or how much a U.S. taxpayer could pass estate tax-free to children? What was it? This would be the interactive session, right? So everybody can, there's got to be some old guys in here who do remember. It was what? $600,000. So what is it today? It's over $5 million. Carrie, what is it exactly? $5,430,000? Yeah, $5,430,000. Advanced marketing doesn't have as much fun as they used to have, do you, Carrie? Right. It's a lot more fun with mine with $600,000. We could pass $1 million too. That world's gone away. The major reason we sold insurance to a lot of affluent people back in the 1990s was why? Because when you fell over dead, Uncle Sam was out with his hand and says, write me a check. And as many of you know today, it's been passed by the House Ways and Means Committee and passed by the lower house to eliminate the estate tax in its entirety. It may go away completely. We have to figure out how to have a meaningful conversation with affluent clients that still deals with taxes, but perhaps it's not estate taxes. You're going to see a number of names here under these affluent profiles. And I go right back to what Don said this morning. It really hit me when he said this. It's all about being customer-centric. We make the mistake, and when I say we, I mean a carrier, we make the mistake about being product-centric. Here's our product. Now, how does that fit with the clients? What we are getting better at, and I think where we're really seeing some change in my company, is to say we've got to understand the customer better so that we can then build the right product. Right now, today, we have a consumer research group that is looking at product solutions and what insurance products need to look like to meet what clients want today. What I profiled up here is what research is telling us. And when I say research, I mean research. And every one of the sitting in this audience that has ever sold a Transamerica policy, would you please raise your hand? All right, thank you. One, thank you for that business. Two, what we're doing is looking at that business that has been sold and saying, what do those customers look like? And then laying over on top of that the other demographical information that we know about those folks, the psychological information that we know about those folks, so that we can have a better connection with them than we've had in the past. And when I say we, I mean you. So the idea is, what do I bring to you to help you have a better connection? If it's not an existing customer, it's that referral that Colleen talked about in the second session, that referral that leads to a customer that looks like them. Because just as she said very clearly, people of the same feather flock together. So how can we have them look like that? So I've laid out some profiles. I think you'll recognize these clients. I'm going to talk about how we have conversations with them. Financially savvy is one of the groups we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about guidance followers. We're going to talk about emerging affluence. These are the younger people. The first two groups, you're going to be baby boomers in the room, are going to be very comfortable with. They're part of our generation, maybe guidance followers, Gen X. The emerging affluent is starting that move from millennials to Gen X. They're building their wealth. They're not the wealthy of today, but they will be tomorrow. And they look a lot different than the wealthy of today. And so I hope most of us planning on being in the business for at least 10 years or more, we will be dealing with these clients. So we want to learn about that. And small business owners. Does everybody have small business owners in their book? Yeah. So we'll be talking about each one of those profiles and how we connect and how we have better conversations. Let's look what wealthy look like today. This is just kind of giving you some numbers and some table setting about what the wealthy look like. This is the wealthy in this country today. Spectrum Group does an annual survey. They're based in Greenwich, Connecticut. And this is their definition. So sometimes I wish they did a little more line items for you. But it shows you what the affluent millionaire and ultra-high net worth look like today. These are households, not individuals. So among the affluent, 100 to a million, there's almost 30 million of those households. The millionaire to 5 millionaire, just shy of 9 million households. That's a great market. That's a market that today a lot of times doesn't think they need us. Millionaire households say, what do I need life insurance for? I've got the income replacement deal down. Third group, the ultra-high net worth. That we love them, there's just not enough of them. Right? There's over 1 million ultra net worth, 5 million to 25 million. We can still have an estate tax story. We won't know if we'll have that in 2 or 3 years. The estate tax story today is a strange story because it's over basically 11 million if they do their planning right. So again, how do we start connecting within these affluent groups and these households, and what do they think about? Let me share some of this data, particularly in the back. It'll be difficult to see. This is today's millionaires. This is from a Fidelity study. So Fidelity talks about, and I'm going to stick on the millionaires. The decamillionaires are great to know, but you all are very successful with them. There's a lot of high planning. Let's talk about the millionaires today. 2.5 million, average age 62, 60% male, 40% female. Overwhelmingly white, annual household income $200,000, median, meaning half the incomes are higher, half the incomes lower, $125,000, over half are retired. Do you know clients that look like that today? Yep, we do. And we know that group, again, is sometimes difficult to reach. A lot of that group, at 2.5 million, back in 1992, I had a pretty good story to talk about around the estate tax today. Today, I find that there's a different conversation we need to have with the wealthy. And the affluent and the wealthy, I'm going to use those two interchangeably. Now, one of my favorite things, and one of the advisors always taught me way back in the old days, was when you ask a question, you better know what? Yeah, the answer, just like a good lawyer. So they're like two open-ended questions that I love that have a great conversation with clients. First one is, what's important to you about your wealth? Very good open-ended question. What's important to you about your wealth? Anybody in the room want to tell us about what's important to them about their wealth? Keeping it? Passing it on? What else? Well, security, protection. The number one thing we hear the most is security and protection about wealth. You said keeping it. Someone else said passing it on. Growth, preservation. So in every one of those questions, what do I start understanding about that client? What's important to them? What did Don tell us earlier? Right? That we have to identify this group and then start making our solutions different, because once I say that, because at the end of the day, what's kind of interesting about what's important to your wealth, the number one answer we hear is security. What's the follow-up question to security is what? How do you define security? How do you define security? Right? Again, that will differ by clients. We know that from a gender difference, men tend to say, that I have lots of money, I have a lot of ability to do things. Men tend to define wealth by a solid number, how big it is. They're always obsessed by size. That's a joke. You guys can relax a little bit. It's all right. Yeah, they're obsessed by size. Women tend to define wealth by what does it mean for me and my family? So if we've had this first open up question about what does your wealth mean to you, and how do you define certain things, and we have our husband and wife together as a married couple discussion, because you're going to see that's one of my hot buttons of research, I think, is how that interaction goes and how we can be more successful in dealing with it. What's the third question, do you think, once we've gotten through all of those? And what is your plan to keep it? What is your plan to pass it to your children? Someone said, grow it. What is your plan to grow your wealth? Have we done much of the talking at this point? No. What's important to you about your wealth, and whatever they say, what do you mean by that? And number 3, what is your plan to make sure that you do that? Because oftentimes, what will clients say in response to that last one? I don't know. Now, maybe growing their wealth to say, well, I'm putting my money in a 401k, I'm saving it in retirement, I'm doing etc. But oftentimes, I want to leave it to my kids. What's your plan? Right? So how do we start taking that, what we know is now can become a customized solution for that client out of what we have? So that's where the power is. What I hope to show you today is about the statistics we have and the data we have that go back to those questions so that you can bring back a better solution, a more customized plan that will make that client take action and ultimately follow your advice. So we talked about the millionaires and decamillionaires. Here's the emerging affluent and the mass affluent. Start noticing the changes. I will share for those of you in the back of the room. And no surprises to a lot of this. They don't have as much assets. No shock there. They're not. The mass affluent, the average is $800,000. The median, not average, median. And that includes retirement assets. The emerging affluent, it's $250,000. But they're a heck of a lot younger. So it goes from 58 for mass affluent to 40 for emerging affluent. There are a lot more women in the emerging affluent, 68%. One of the dominating trends we have to understand in our business is the rise of women's financial power. We're going to talk in the next section here about couple decision making and how that model is starting to change. But one of the things you have to understand with the millennials is the changes in the rise of financials of women's financial power. One, they're more educated than guys. They're graduating at higher rates from college, getting their master's degrees, and getting their advanced degrees. I read one study that said if you looked at the MBA programs across the country in 1984, the male to female ratio, and you switched it, you would have today's ratio. So it's about a 70 to 80% female ratio to about a 30% male ratio. Completely opposite of when I got my MBA. In major urban areas, women under 30 are on average out-earning their male counterparts in urban areas. So we better understand how those conversations look a little bit differently and what's important to women while keeping along both the spouses, in that relationship. So we start talking about what do today's millionaires look like. What do they want from you? Right? And this is one of the things that I found very interesting. This was a Merrill Lynch survey. And so it may be skewed a little bit to those who do more investment advice. But what I thought was very interesting, they asked their clients, what do you want from your financial advisor? And of course, what we're eliminating here are personality characteristics. I'm not talking about honesty and that you answer, that you're there for them, that you're timely. But in terms of what they want to achieve in working with a financial advisor, what do you think these clients said? They allowed multiple responses to a Merrill Lynch survey. What would be your guess would be number one that they were asking, they were saying? Sorry? Education, and that appears. Anything else? My best interests. Choice. I haven't heard anything about growing assets. And you all are right. They said number one was, help me understand my risk tolerance and plan around it. Do you think pre-Great Recession that would have been the same number one response? Pre-Great Recession, what would have everyone said? Help me make lots of money. Grow my wealth, right? Those of us in the boomer ages have now lived through it, right? So we saw the 90s with the bubble around the internet. We saw the early 2000s, the bubble around real estate. We saw the Great Recession come. And now clients are saying, help me understand this risk. We talk about risk tolerance all the times around investments. They don't understand what that means. We're talking from a broader standpoint than investment risk. Number two was help me understand my goals, my values, and my dreams and how they impact each other. So are we helping our clients when we're talking about that retirement dream? A very interesting thing I read is that this was another study from Fidelity that said people need to see real retirement. Do you remember a few years ago before the Great Recession? Well, how did everybody picture retirement in the media? The companies, the advertising companies. What did they show you? You're on a yacht, you're in your own vineyard, you're doing all these great things in retirement. And people said, that's not me. Now what do they talk about? Try to follow the red line so you have enough money. Because we went through a Great Recession. People are a lot more realistic about maybe what retirement looks like. I might have to work. Hopefully I'm going to do something that I want to do. So help me understand how that all looks. And the last one goes back to what you said, educate me. Provide relevant research and market insights. And this was the one that I've always said is huge for clients. And then we'll never achieve anything unless they feel what? In control. So my customized solution has to make them feel like they're in control. In the old world of estate planning, I used to hate it because all the time we'd talk to clients about what? Irrevocable life insurance trust with crummy powers. And you give things away and get them out of your estate. What do clients always feel like? They're losing control. I don't want to talk about that. I'm losing control. One of the challenges of life insurance is what's the first thing you think about when we talk about life insurance? You think about being what? Dead. That's kind of a loss of control, isn't it? People say, no, I don't want to talk about that. Right? So it's keeping this control element and addressing what they really are all kind of saying are the three biggies today in planning. A lot of them don't care so much about number one. If I die too soon, they have the assumption that that's somehow going to work out if I die too soon. That's why a lot of our products aren't very relevant to them. I got some life insurance at work. I'm okay. Or I've got so much assets built up, I don't need life insurance because all it does is help the kids. Or I have enough assets to leave the kids, I don't need life insurance. But what about number two? Is that a big one? What if I live too long? What if I run out of money? That's the one everyone's freaked out about. And the third one? Right? Baby boomers in the room. Who in this room, if you're a baby boomer, that means if you were born up to 1964, they tell us, who in this room is not either dealing with a parent that has a long-term care issue or has a friend who's dealing with a parent that has a long-term care issue? Raise your hand. Yeah. You don't think every boomer right now is open to having a discussion about long-term care? Because we are all freaked out about it. Because now it's all really come home. Right? So you start seeing all these things about what they care about. Now, I said to you that one of the things I'd like to look at in the research and understand is how do couples make decisions? And what we found from a firm that we work with is some research they did. Now, the couple comments I want to make is one, this is with today's affluent group. Although they also included millennials in this survey at lower income and lower wealth levels. So, among affluent, they would suggest that today's picture looks like this. So what we have here is about who makes the decisions, and I want you to jot this down as you jot down these numbers, and I hope you're doing that. As you jot down these numbers, I want you to understand that who makes the decisions is around investments and life insurance. Two things I think you care about very much. So sometimes when we look at this, we start making some jumps and some conclusions that I think are incorrect. You'll notice that the number one model between a husband and wife in making decision-making around investments and life insurance is male-led. That is only around investments and life insurance, right, gentlemen? Right? Who watches HGTV, and when the couples are picking the house out of the three, who really makes the decision about who the house is going to be? The wife, right? You can always tell in that show if the wife says, "Oh, I don't like this," that one's not going to be on the list, right? The closet's too small, whatever it is, you're like, "Okay, that one's done." Husband's like, "Oh, this is going to be my man cave." No, it's not. You're gone, right? So what I want you understand, this is around investments and life insurance, not around other items, because that can be very confusing. I had a gentleman yesterday said, "Well, this seems like I Love Lucy." I said, "No, this does not mean that the man dominates in all decisions. This means in the investments and life insurance, in these households, among affluent, men tend to dominate 40% of the time." Two things come out of that are very interesting. One is that you tend to go to the male risk tolerance. In general, do you think males are more or less risk tolerant? Who's more risky? That's an easier question. Men or women? Who takes more risk? Men, that's right. I mean, all you have to watch are some of those things about what guys do in their 20s to see that men take more risks, right? Once they survive that period, then they tend to kind of settle down. So they take more risk. Who do you think, for fun, is a better investor? Who do you think has better returns over the long run, men or women? Women. Very good answer, gentlemen. Women. Yes. Because of the very same thing. They are more patient, right? So what happens is they don't trade as much as men. So their investment returns at lower levels of risk tend to be better than men. So the reason I point this out is so that we start understanding the dynamics. There's two things on here. One is risk tolerance. Men tend to be more risky than women when it comes to risk tolerance for investments. And you'll notice another thing, more financial confidence. So there are three other quadrants here. We've got shared decision making at about a quarter of the households. 16% make separate decisions. They kind of have a his and hers account, and then maybe a little bit they manage together. My bet is that's a lot of second marriages, but this is the guess. And the last one, and the growing one, is women-led. So women are making the financial decisions. Now, within that, what we tend to find is the financial confidence changes. You'll notice over here for men it's very high when they're making the decisions, not a shock. But in those households, women are the least confident in the financial decisions that have been made. So everybody kind of understand what analysis is coming out of that? Why is that important to you? Because we need to be tailoring the conversation, Don, like you told us earlier, we need to be tailoring the conversation that's appropriate to that couple. If we have a better understanding of the decision maker, who are we used to, a lot of us baby boomers, being the decision maker around investments and life insurance? Men. The problem is that a lot of times we still lost the sale. Right? So what we're going to talk about is how do we bring this all together so that we understand what they're trying to do. Among these couples, we understood that they agreed on broad terms. They still run big decisions by each other. As an advisor, is it important even in a male-dominated life insurance discussion that the wife like you? I've heard a couple of people say yes. I guess the other guys don't care, right? Is it important that the wife like you? Yeah, I would say a hell yes, right? Because what happens when you've walked out of that appointment if the wife doesn't like you? you're done. You're toast, right? So again, we need to understand how to, and the thing that I'm trying to really bring across is, how do you have a conversation that appeals to both of them? So think about how we talk to them so that they're both feeling included in the conversation. Because among each other, they don't agree. Probably doesn't surprise a lot of you. This one didn't surprise me. And a meeting yesterday, the guys and gals thought this was way too low. It says 57% don't agree on retirement. How many of you feel like your spouse wants you to work longer than you want to work before you retire? I'm going to raise my hand, right? Yeah, so 57% don't agree. This one was kind of surprising to me. 58% don't work with an advisor jointly. Dangerous territory to be in, isn't it? Just working with one of the couples. And what we found from a lot of the research, both from third party and our own consumer research, is the way we have these conversations has to look different. That what they look for tends to be a little bit different. Men like expertise. A lot of us are very comfortable. How many times have we talked about the stats and the internal rates of return and all that great stuff? For you, those of you who manage money, maybe it's about beating the market. Where are we compared to the market? What we're finding in market research is that those kind of conversations don't mean as much to the woman. She wants to know, where are we progressing compared to our goals? Beating the market is as important as, am I on the path to achieving my goals? They look more for a coach than an expert. So can we modify our conversations so that both feel included and that both feel like we're on the right path, we're on the right plan? So let's talk about this man-led decision making. Let's look at that. And again, around investments and insurance. One thing that was interesting is that 40% number among the affluent had held across all age groups, including millennials. So even though there's the rise of female financial power, it was very interesting to see that 40% among the affluent led across all households. In those cases, they tend to default to the men's risk. But this is the warning sign for all of us, right? The wife isn't included in these conversations, doesn't feel part of the conversations. What happens when the husband dies or they divorce? You get what? You get fired, right? You're not part of the advisor. The assets go away. And I always talked about in estate planning, you need to build a relationship with who? Not just the spouse, but who else? The children, right? To be there with the kids. So let's look at this financially savvy client, because they tend to be, again, this is a profile of clients we know you've worked with within Transamerica. We think you have more of them in your book, and we want to talk about how can we help you grow that client segment. So Mike might be very worried about number 2. He probably needs number 1. Most folks don't have enough life insurance. And I'll steal Mike Thackston's great line where he says, one of the meetings, the ways he sets up client meetings is, I want to make sure you don't have too much life insurance, right? But the gentleman probably needs life insurance. Probably worried about the long-term financial decisions. And he meets regularly with advisors. This is kind of the profile of our financially savvy client. This is the one that is overrepresented in the Transamerica book of business that you've sold. So I'm hoping you're kind of recognizing Mike. You guys kind of see a Mike in your book? This is what we know about Jennifer. From research and analysis, this is what we know about the spouses. She's typically insecure about finances. She's more pessimistic about the future than all the other couple groups. The most pessimistic. She realizes that likely she's going to end up having to make some financial decisions. Because who tends to die earlier, men or women? Men. Easy answer right now. Still men, although women are catching up now. Right? So if you think of that client, what do you start thinking about? What are their goals? So Mike knows that he needs to leave something for Jennifer if something happens to him. Tax issues are huge, right? So he worries about taxes, so he's probably maxing out his 401k. He'd like to supplement some retirement income, be able to tap into something. Jennifer's financially insecure. She wants protection. What, I don't know, be crazy. What do you think could help them achieve their financial goals? Meeting sponsored by Transamerica. Think for a little bit. What could help them achieve their financial goals? Come on, be crazy, be wild. What do you think it would be? Yeah, I heard this table's a smart table down here. They're always answering right. What do y'all think? What do you think it would work? Yeah, some life insurance. And maybe what we highlight are the different features of the product that benefit each other. So we happen to have an index UL product that kind of emphasizes the growth of cash values to build it up for retirement or for emergencies. Now, a lot of people have great IUL products. The little twist that we have on our product that we like is that you can be all in a domestic account or you can add a global account. Global accounts can be very attractive because they tend to, over the long run, kind of outperform the domestic over the long run. And it's kind of nice to have a blend. So you can put all your money, or you can split your money and put part of it in the domestic account, or you can put it over in the global account. There's 3 components of the global. 20% of it's the Hang Seng Index. That's China. China has good years. China has bad years. That's 20%. But then you get the better of, for 50% of that link, of the S&P 500 or the Euro Stoxx 50, the top 50 companies in Europe. Last year, who was a better index, had better performance? The S&P 500 or the Euro Stoxx? The S&P 500 did great, right? Europe's going into recession. Europe's having a lot of problems. This year so far, who's performing better? The Euro Stoxx. Guess what? With this one, it doesn't matter. Because we look back and we give you 50% of whichever did better. The S&P 500 or the Euro Stoxx. And then the balance, that remaining 30%, is credited based on that remaining structure, either the Euro Stoxx or the S&P 500. So 50% of the better of the performing two, 30% of the second one, and always 20% of the Hang Seng. So people kind of like that. They can put part of their money into it and they can put part of their money out. The other thing is that we kind of made our product simple. Because this IUL world has gotten very complex. And again, it's carrier faults. A lot of carriers, we've created a lot of havoc about what are we trying to do? Create the best illustrations. Let me just ask you, how valuable is it really an illustration? It's none. That's right. Those of you who are my age, we all remember the old days about illustrations. I was so young and naive, I used to run UL illustrations at 14% projected on out. And I thought, oh, they're going to do great. I never have to worry about those. Look at all the money these people are going to get. God, I guess I was wrong, damn it. Right? So what I say today is, oh my God, can we get off the whole idea about whose product's going to perform better or product perform worse? I like IUL, and I'm more of a recent convert to IUL because now I'm kind of understanding that it can be simple. Before, when I sat through a lot of these, it'd be very complex and talking about the market movements and all of that stuff. And I think what we have to say to clients is, we run a conservative illustration. You run it at 4, 5, 6.5, whatever you're comfortable with. And what you say to clients is it can do a little better, it can do a little worse, but let's fund this thing and let's look about it in the worst case scenarios. So if it doesn't perform so well. And on the upside, if it does well, here we're going to have a little bit extra money sitting in it. So here we show you our maximum illustrated rates. We don't illustrate at the maximum illustrated rates. And they are based, just as you suggested, on historical levels of how that performs. I don't care. Let's show them something more conservative, right? Or you look at that one and then you do a midpoint. You'll see our caps at 12. And one of the interesting things with us is you can buy up a cap. So one of the things you can do for an asset charge is buy up our cap and have a higher cap. And you might kind of think, well, why would I want to do that? You're going to charge me a little bit more to buy up the cap. Well, it's around that market volatility. And this is a slide that Carrie and I work on this presentation, and we are challenged beyond belief on this slide. And really what we're trying to show you are the times that the market does really well and does really poor. And we looked back at the last 25 years. We went back to 1990. and looked at the times it did really well and the times it did really poor. If you buy up our cap, because remember our normal cap on that global is 14. You can do an asset charge and buy up to 20. Well, interesting enough, in the last 15 years, it was 9 times out of 16, 9 times out of 25. I have to look at Carrie, make sure I have my math. How much does State University? I'm slow. So 9 times out of the 25, it hit 20. 9 times. Carrie, what was the number of the times it went over 10? So 13 times. So it might be valuable to have that higher cap. Again, you pay for it, and maybe you do it during the accumulation period and switch during the distribution period while you're trying to build money. No, on the other side, markets are volatile. There's the zeros. I want to show you the downsides. And it doesn't mean that there's not the insurance charges aren't going on. So if I thinly funded this and I run into a period there of 3 years where I'm at zeros, what happens to my policy? You have a very unhappy client, right? Because the charges didn't stop in the contract. But luckily what we're not doing is going in and swooping money because the index is in negative territory. For clients that are comfortable with that, what type of product do we have? Called VUL, where you fully experience the market. Here it's linked to the market. So that typically over the long run we'll be able to get a little bit better interest crediting into that product for them. So that's the ability to buy up the cap on the contract. So like I said, what Carrie and I look at a lot of times, and Carrie's really owns this within the advanced marketing group, is looking at the challenges of what happens if you don't do so well. So we stress test it. Because if you're like me, I'm okay, this is great on the upside. And there's some really powerful things that these products can do on the upside. But let's look a little bit at the downside. So at a 3.5%, let's say the world is terrible, and from when my client bought this policy at age 49 to age 65, the average was 3.5. Pretty bad world. And I'll tell you what, if the world looks like that, 3.5, and they're not having losses to their account, they're probably what? Pretty happy. But the nice thing with it is the product still stays in force. It doesn't lapse until a projected lapse rate of 97. Yes, sir. The premium on that contract is $12,000 a year for 20 years. Good question. His question was, what's the premium? 10 years, I beg your pardon. $12,000 for 10 years. I said a State University, I'm slow. $12,000 for 10 years means I put how much into the policy? Carrie, I put $120,000. If I were to surrender at 65 because I've been disappointed, how much would we send you back? You would get your money back, $126,000, assuming a 3.5% interest scenario from there. Hopefully we'll do better. But what I like to do is the stress testing. What happens with that contract? So that is $12,000 for 10 years on that policy. Now, there's another part of this. That's great for the cash values. There's also a death benefit here. So while I'm talking to the husband about maybe some of the stress testing, maybe some of the projections of the values, what do I need to turn and say to his wife? This is a life insurance policy. And if something happens to Mike, there's a death benefit that's paid to you. She's the most uncomfortable of all our 4 couple scenarios. So making the importance of life insurance is a big deal, right? She realizes that she may live longer than Mike. So there's a death benefit involved in that. So that's kind of our talk about financially savvy. Do you guys have financially savvy clients you think in your book? Yeah, I think you do. Let's talk about my next one. Let's talk about my guidance follower. My guidance follower is a is a client that reflects a lot of what women say. Men say my number one worry is about running out of money. Majority of women say, and again, this is through multiple priorities, but the top worry is being a financial burden to a loved one. What kind of thought process should that signal to us? Being a financial burden to a loved one. Long-term care, right? long-term care, particularly for women, is very challenged because what's happening around long-term care on standalone policies? Rates are doing what? Going up. They're going up. A lot of claims. What's the other worry that you hear a lot from clients, whether it be male or female, about long-term care? What happens if I don't use it? I'm going to lose it. One, we think women are your best clients, your best prospects and clients, particularly in what this area we call guidance followers. These tend to be women that are looking for advice. They're kind of like me in a car. I understand how a car works. I have no desire to do work on it. I want to go to a mechanic. They want to come to you. They want to get advice on their situation. They tend to be more conservative, hence they kind of like an IUL. I got some downside protection on that. Right? I'm not doing a full experience in the markets. So she's not really comfortable about running everything on her own. She wants your guidance. And she tends to be more risk adverse. She also has a lot of money in cash. Tends to, then more than the other demographic groups, have more money sitting in cash. So one of the things we talk about is a long-term care rider. Now, our long-term care rider, like a lot of companies, isn't approved in the state of Florida, but what we tend to see is that you all work with clients all over the country and often work. Are there snowbirds that come to Florida and then go back home? And do some of you who are based in Florida tend to work with clients up north? Because our long-term care rider is approved in the other states. So you're up north visiting your client, it's a great time to look at the long-term care rider. Yes, sir. We are begging the state of Florida for approval. As you know, the state of Florida is a challenge around long-term care. We are on bended knee begging. So yes, we have. Our long-term care rider is an indemnity benefit. So again, if you're on a plan of care, once we know that you're on a plan of care, all we look for on receipts is that you're following the plan. Then you get the maximum HIPAA daily limit payout for you under the long-term care benefit. So as we index that for inflation. So we're not doing a full reimbursement. We just need to see that you're on a plan of care. You know, can't do the 2 out of 5 activities of daily living. So one of the things to look at is, so is it expensive to do this long-term care rider? Well, I went back to that kind of stress testing. So I'm running it at 3.5%, and I'm looking at what's the stress test of having that long-term care rider dragging, quote unquote, on my policy versus not being on my policy. What did it do to my accumulation and my cash surrender value? So in the policy without the long-term care rider, I had $148,781, and where I did have the rider, I had $141,000. Remember, that's for a client. Let me tell you a little bit about her. I got to look at the notes. Let's see. She is 52 when she bought it, preferred. 148 versus 141. Didn't cost her a lot of money over all those years to have the long-term care rider. So pretty powerful. If we go to a scenario where we have a little bit better of accumulation, let me go forward on that. So I just want to kind of show you how does that benefit Kathy is, again, she doesn't use the long-term care rider. She's got a full death benefit going to her family. Let's talk quickly about the emerging affluent. This is that last column here. That 40, 68% female. The group that is moving into dominance from the millennial side. So how can we talk about what they want? One, they're more conservative. Millennials are more conservative than baby boomers when it comes to assets and investing. Why is that? Why do you think millennials are more conservative? They saw what happened to their folks. They're launching their careers later. They're more of a struggle with their careers. Yet only a quarter of them are highly confident that they can generate enough income to cover retirement. They're saving for retirement now instead of buying their first house. They're forming houses later. They're having children later. So they are a great market to talk about our products. So in this group, remember we had talked about the rise of women as financial breadwinners. So they typically save more than men, 8.3 versus 7.9. We already talked about their higher return, although they are less confident in their financial decisions. They sound like right folks to be talking to advisors to help them. So meet Lisa. She's the primary breadwinner in the household. She makes more money than her husband, who's a school teacher. She'd like to cover some life insurance needs and also build up some savings for retirement. She's not real confident that Tom could necessarily manage a lot of money coming in at one time. So we kind of talked to her about having a monthly income come into her household in the way of our income protection option, which is available in our whole portfolio. So in that case, she's getting $2,500 into a month for her husband over 20 years. Kind of help him budget himself. So again, if you're not familiar with our income protection option, we offer it in both our term and our permanent product portfolio. It allows the client to select anywhere from an initial lump sum to guaranteed monthly income to a final lump sum. So Lisa picked 20 years of monthly income. Now, kind of the interesting thing is by using that on our IUL product and on option 2 is that we can have some growth. What happened on this contract is it got pushed into corridor, and initially we started out as guaranteed monthly income, but once we went into corridor and we had additional death benefit, that's available as initial lump sum. You'll see that happen later out in her case in later years because she's young and she's paying a lower premium. But it's kind of interesting to see that now it's kind of adding to the amount that will be available to the family should she die later. And we also saved her in premium. I just used the IPO in a huge case where I know you'll be shocked. It was a big term policy, and the client believed he should be preferred best class, and he went through underwriting and he was a standard. Never happened to you guys? That ever happened? Client just seems like, right? This is a big old term case, $5 million term case, and so I told the broker, I said, go back to him, because of course clients ticked off, and that's the nice word to use, right? How dare the company think I'm not in great health? So go back to client and say, if you can get a 10% discount from Transamerica on this premium, would he take it? What are you talking about? What we did is we took that $5 million and we paid it over 10 years, 13% discount in this premium. So we were able to save what was a rated case back. But you have to ask that initial question. If I can get you a 10% discount, and don't say it until you know what the discount looks like, of course, but if I can get you a 10% discount, would you go ahead and get the policy? So let me talk about my favorite group, small business owners. And really for small business owners, there's a huge challenge today. The recession's over. It's hard to keep talent. And it costs a lot of money to retain employees. And today, there's huge turnover, right? So 75% of an organization's top performers are leaving within 3 years. And I want you to think, what I'm really thinking about prospects here, I'm not talking about your 100-person company. I'm not talking about your 75 or your 50 or your 25. I'm talking about your 5-man shop where there's some key people in that. Some key people within that organization. And I want to talk about a plan where you keep some key people in that organization. And to do that, I'm going to have to actually do a little bit of role plays. Everybody good? I know Tom's not going to be happy because I'm leaving the main stage. That's too bad. I'm going to pick on my 2 great employees right here. You get the option first because you had a problem getting in the hotel last night, Tyler. So Tyler, do you want to be the boss or the employee? Oh, good choice. You're the boss. So Tyler, you're the boss. I need you to have a key employee. Who at the table is the most valuable employee in your organization? You pick. Okay, I wouldn't have gone that way, but all right. So you got Nick. So Nick, you're the key employee. Now, Nick, I want you to think about you. Tyler, I'm going to just change your life a little bit. You are the operations guy, not the sales guy, okay? Just for now. He didn't like that. All right, you're the sales guy, you're the operator. It can be either way. But he runs the business deal. He's got to be there running the organization every day. Now, Nick, you're the top sales guy. You're bringing in all the new accounts. You're bringing everybody into the business. That's really valuable. Now, the way when I worked in advanced marketing, the way this was always sold, it was called an executive bonus program. It was called a Section 162 program. You need to make a vow to me right now that you will never say those words again to a client, all right? Because one, it's meaningless to them. And the worst thing is to bring up Section 162, because then they're like, what is that? Oh, it's where you deduct compensation. Like, big deal. So we call it a small business triple play. And what we're saying to Tyler is, Tyler, we want a program to keep Nick at your organization. Nick, how old are you? Do you mind me asking? Nick's 34. Young guy, has a lot of opportunities out there, but we want to keep him tied to your organization. Nick, I have 2 questions for you. It'll be very important in my case here. One, are you married? And what's your wife's name? Bonnie. And do you love her? I do. Okay, no hesitation, that's good. I did one the other day, and the woman was like, so I kind of, okay. So he loves his wife, he's married. So here's the question. Okay, so what I want to do, Tyler, is sit down with Nick, with you, and talk about how a small business triple play can keep him at our organization. Would that be okay? All right, Tyler likes that. So we're going to sit down with Nick. Nick, I know you're young. You got a lot of opportunities. We really believe in you. We got group insurance here, but what I'd like to do, Nick, if anything happens to you, that we would pay 1/2 of your income to Bonnie for the next 15 years if anything would happen to you. That would be our first part of our program. Nick's not too excited yet because it's insurance. All right, so now, Nick, on top of that, we're going to use a permanent policy. It's an IUL contract. It's called Navigator from Transamerica. I'm just saying you'd say that, but it's the Navigator. And within that, what it does is it helps build some money, build some cash values. I'm going to pay all the premium. Tyler's going to pay all the premium on this contract. And it's going to build some cash values. And Nick, at some point, if you need it for an emergency or if you're getting closer to retirement, wherever you are in your life, you can access some of those cash values for whatever you need. You're still not too excited, are you, Nick? Okay, it's a little hard play here with Nick. He's not real excited yet. Nick's a little young for this one, but the last one that we offer, in the states where our long-term care rider is approved, we offer the full long-term care rider. Now I got a Florida employee, and this Florida Department of Insurance is a heck of a challenge for that approval. So Nick, what we did is on top of that, because we can't offer you the full long-term care rider like we can in 48 of our other states, what we're going to do is buy additional term life insurance that has a living benefit on it. It's called Trendsetter LB. And within that, it also has the ability, it's got 3 things. It's got a chronic care, it's also got a terminal, and it's got a critical illness. So if during your lifetime, if something happens to you where you need some insurance benefit to be paid out early because you can't work and some other things have happened, this term policy has that structure. How does that sound for you? And as long as you're with me, Tyler, what, Tyler? We're getting there, Tyler. We're getting there. We would have talked about this first. Tyler's worried about it. It's like he's a timeout. When Tyler asked me up front, how much is it going to cost me, what would I say? Oh, see, he answered his own question, right? As a client, what did I do? How important is keeping Nick with you? How important is it to keep Nick with you? Now, you can give Nick a raise, but if you put a program, what we call small business triple play, in place for Nick, all of a sudden it has a very different parameter. I'm providing you a replacement of income. I'm providing you ability to grow some retirement or emergency savings and the ability to have some long-term care protection. And I'm only paying that as long as you're doing what, Tyler? Yeah, producing. There you go. As long as you're working for me. As long as you're here. And the last thing is, Nick, if you're willing to cough up $500 a month, we'll do the same thing. We'll match that and we'll do a policy on Bonnie's life. On Bonnie's life. Nobody will have ever gone to Tyler and made a suggestion to him like that. I can't tell you how many executive bonus program proposals I ran in my life that never went anywhere because what would happen is no one ever sat down with Nick, right? Because how's Tyler going to tell him the program works? Oh, we're bonusing you the premium, on a life insurance policy. The insurance guy said it's a great deal. And what does Nick say? No, I don't think so. Why don't you just give me that money directly, right, Nick? Isn't that what you're going to say? Just give me the cash. Let me decide what to do with it. You got to sit down with the two of them. And Nick is a millennial that's very valuable and already going up there in lifestyle. Would he be a nice client to cultivate? I need an affirmation. I'm feeling a little lonely up here. Yes. Yeah, he'd be a great client to cultivate. So really, this is kind of our program, and what we talk about in our small business triple play is the ability to use Navigator to really build some benefit. Now, one other little thing I'm going to share with you that it's hard to see here, but in the states that we have the long-term care rider approved, what's very cool is if we put it on an option 2, meaning our death benefit is increasing, the long-term care rider benefit increases. Because one of the challenges today is that companies are getting rid of inflation riders on long-term care insurance. Initially, our death benefit on this policy for our executive, and let me give you a little bit of the data around him real quick. We were putting in $12,000 for 15 years on a long-term care policy for him. So we had really set this up to do an IPO, so it was going to pay $2,000 a month out and no lump sum. He's 45 years old, preferred non-smoker. Well, when we got out here to when he would really need long-term care, keeping the policy in force, look at the amount of benefit available, $287,000. So what's happened is he didn't take any other cash. The policy's death benefit has grown as it's gone option 2, and now he can take that all out, assuming under that Maxima HIPAA daily limit, we've had that cost of living increase. Nobody else on the street really has that. So it's a little bit different thing to look at as an ability to take care of it. But really what we wanted to talk about today is I hope you thought of some clients in there as we talked about it. You really had 4 segment groups that we're talking about. Kind of that Mike that we're used to, the financially savvy client. Maybe we're emphasizing retirement income to him and death benefit for his wife. We hope you think about really Kathy. That's the one that needs your guidance, that long-term care may be very important to her. How do we have that discussion, and how do we build that in with the idea around death benefit? Then was the emerging affluent, Lisa, the one that's trying to build some savings and protect her household income. And lastly, my small business triple play. All right, with that, we are at almost time for lunch, and I know we have specific directions about our lunch. So when we go out the door, we're going to go past the Starbucks and up to the lunch area for that. I've got exactly 12 o'clock. Is that about what everybody says? Everybody agrees at 12 o'clock? Let's all be back in this room by 1 o'clock. All right, thank you very much. We'll see you in an hour.